Before I tell you this, I need to ask, have you ever stood at the edge of Canyon de Chelly at sunset? If you have, leave a comment below. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see this sacred place forever. The canyon walls glow red in the dying light, 800 feet of Navajo sandstone rising from the desert floor like the bones of the earth itself. Ancient ruins cling to the cliffs, pueblos that have watched over this land for 1,000 years. And some of those ruins, the ones sealed with stone and prayers back in 1943, were never meant to be opened again. My name is Sarah Nez. I'm a Navajo tribal ranger at Canyon de Chelly National Monument in northeastern Arizona. What I'm about to tell you isn't legend. It isn't folklore passed down to scare children into behaving. This is what happened to me 6 months ago when I came home to find out what really killed my brother. I grew up in Chelly, the small town that sits at the mouth of the canyon. My parents died in a car accident when I was 8 years old. Highway 191, black ice, head-on collision with a semi-truck. I don't remember much about them anymore, just fragments. My mother's hands braiding my hair, my father's laugh. After that, my grandmother raised me in a small house 2 miles from the canyon rim. Shimasani, that's what we call our grandmothers, tried to teach me everything. The language, the traditional ways, the stories about what lived in the deep places of the canyon. But I was angry. Angry at my parents for leaving, angry at the world, angry at traditions that couldn't bring them back. So I rejected it all. As soon as I graduated from high school, I left. I went as far as I could get while still doing the work I loved. Yellowstone National Park, 200 miles north in Wyoming. I became a park ranger there. For 8 years, I told myself I'd built a new life. I worked search and rescue. I led wilderness patrols. I was good at my job. I dated a guy from Billings for 3 years. I had friends who didn't know anything about the reservation, about growing up Navajo, about the weight of being from a place where your family goes back hundreds of generations. I convinced myself I was happy. Then 2 months ago, I got the call. My younger brother Marcus was dead at 29 years old. The Chelly police said it was a climbing accident. Marcus had been found at the base of the White House ruins upper cliff section, his body broken on the rocks 400 feet below where he shouldn't have been. That part of the canyon has been closed to climbing since 1972. The ruins up there are sacred, protected. And more than that, there's a sealed cave entrance 20 feet from where his body was found. A cave that was closed and blessed by medicine people 80 years ago, for reasons the official reports called cultural preservation. But Marcus knew that area. He'd been working as a cultural resource specialist for the National Park Service, documenting archaeological sites throughout the canyon. He knew every inch of those walls, knew which sections were forbidden, knew the stories about the sealed caves. My brother wasn't the kind of person who accidentally fell while climbing somewhere he had no business being. Something happened to him, something the official reports weren't saying. I quit my job at Yellowstone 3 weeks after his funeral. My grandmother had died 18 months earlier from cancer, so there was nothing holding me in Wyoming anymore. I applied to the Navajo Nation Division of Natural Resources for a tribal ranger position at Canyon de Chelly. The monument is managed jointly by the National Park Service and the Navajo Nation, and tribal rangers have jurisdiction over incidents that occur within the traditional use areas. If something happened to Marcus, something that the official reports were covering up or couldn't explain, I'd have access to find out. My first day was October 23rd. I drove through Chelly at dawn, past the high school I'd graduated from. past the grocery store where I'd worked summers, past my grandmother's house, which sat empty now, waiting for family to decide what to do with it. The ranger station was a low, modern building just off Highway 7, built from tan stucco that matched the color of the sand. Behind it, the canyon opened up like a wound in the earth. 30 miles of twisting gorges and side canyons carved over millions of years. I pulled into the parking lot at 7:15 in the morning. The sun was just hitting the east-facing cliffs, turning the sandstone from red to gold. 3 other vehicles sat in the lot, 2 patrol trucks with the Navajo Nation seal and 1 older Ford that had seen better days. I grabbed my gear bag and headed inside, my stomach tight with nerves I wasn't ready to admit I had. The interior was what you'd expect. A dispatch desk, 4 ranger desks in the main room, a break room that smelled like burned coffee, and offices in the back. On the walls were maps of the canyon system, patrol schedules, missing person posters, and a framed black and white photograph from 1933 showing Navajo families with their sheep at the base of Spider Rock. But what caught my attention immediately was a different framed document hanging behind the main desk. It looked old, the paper yellowed, and the text handwritten in precise block letters. At the top, it read, Canyon de Chelly, Tribal Ranger Protocols. A door opened and a man walked out. He was maybe 55, with iron gray hair cut short and a face weathered by decades of desert sun. He wore the standard ranger uniform, but his badge showed 27 years of service. His eyes were sharp and seemed to take in everything about me in a single glance. Sarah Nez, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm Captain Thomas Begay. Welcome home. His handshake was firm, his expression neutral but not unfriendly. Thank you, Captain. I appreciate the opportunity. Walk with me. He led me through the station, past the desks where 2 other rangers were reviewing paperwork, into his office. The walls were covered with more maps, but these showed things the tourist maps didn't. Red circles marking locations throughout the canyon, dates written in neat handwriting, lists of names, and photographs, dozens of them, showing things that made my skin crawl, even though I couldn't quite identify why they bothered me. Captain Begay sat behind his desk and gestured for me to take the chair across from him. I knew your brother, he said without preamble. Marcus was a good man, dedicated to his work. What happened to him was a tragedy. The report said he fell while climbing in a restricted area. That's what the report says. His expression didn't change, but something in his tone suggested there was more to it. I also knew your grandmother. She was a remarkable woman. Taught my youngest daughter when she was having trouble in school. Your Shimasani understood things most people don't. I shifted in my chair, uncomfortable with where this was going. Captain, I'm here to work. I'm qualified. I did 8 years at Yellowstone, including... I know your qualifications. That's not why we're having this conversation. He leaned forward. Your grandmother came to see me about 2 years ago. She said you'd be coming home eventually. She said when you did, I needed to make sure you understood what you were walking into. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I don't understand. You will. He stood. Come on, I want you to see something. He led me back out to the main room, over to that framed document I'd noticed earlier. Up close, I could see it had been photocopied and reframed multiple times over the years, the original probably decades old. Canyon de Chelly Tribal Ranger Protocols. These protocols have been maintained by Navajo tribal rangers since 1943. They are not suggestions. They are not superstitions. They are survival instructions based on documented experiences that cannot be explained through conventional law enforcement training. I read through the list. Protocol 1. Never approach a sealed cave entrance alone, especially after dark. These sites were sealed for specific reasons. If a seal appears damaged or disturbed, contact the captain immediately and wait for backup, even if it takes hours. Protocol 2. If pictographs or petroglyphs appear to have changed positions or contain imagery not documented in archaeological surveys, do not touch the rock face. Photograph from a distance, mark the location, and report immediately. Protocol 3. Shadows that appear wrong in length or direction for the time of day indicate corrupted space. Do not enter areas where shadows behave incorrectly. Mark the location and retreat. Protocol 4. Do not answer voices calling from the canyon after dark, even if you recognize the voice as a family member or colleague. Verify all human presence visually before responding. Protocol 5. If you observe individuals moving in ways that violate normal human biomechanics, limbs bending wrong, heads turning too far, speed inconsistent with terrain, do not pursue. Note location, retreat to vehicle, and call for backup. Protocol 6. Whistling heard from multiple directions simultaneously is not wind or echo. It indicates active hunting behavior. Return to vehicle immediately and relocate to a different area of the monument. Protocol 7. Any ranger working within the Spider Rock or White House ruins upper sections must carry traditional protection and check in via radio every 30 minutes. Extended radio silence from these areas constitutes an emergency. I read through the list twice, then turned to Captain Begay. This sounds like stories to scare tourists, or pranks for the new ranger. His expression didn't change. I wish that were true. In the last 20 years, we've had 11 rangers resign because they couldn't handle what they experienced here. We've had 4 who needed counseling, and we've had 2 who died in ways the official reports called accidents because there's no category for what actually happened to them. That's not possible. I've worked wilderness areas. I know about dangerous wildlife, about terrain hazards, about this isn't Yellowstone. His voice was quiet but firm. This canyon is sacred to our people for reasons most of the tourists will never understand. There are 23 sealed cave entrances throughout the monument. They were sealed in 1943 by medicine people from 7 different chapters. Those seals have held for 80 years, but in the last 18 months, 4 of them have been damaged, and people have gone missing near each one. My throat felt dry. Marcus, your brother was investigating damage to the seal at White House ruins upper section. He'd documented it, photographed it, and requested additional cultural resource experts to assess the site. 3 days later, he was found dead at the base of the cliff. The official report says climbing accident because that's what we could prove. But I was at that scene, Sarah. I saw things that didn't make it into any report. Before I could respond, a younger ranger stuck his head into the room. Captain, sorry to interrupt. Morning patrol assignments are ready. Thank you, Dylan. Come in for a minute. Captain Begay gestured. Sarah, this is Dylan Sinagini. He'll be your partner for your first month. Dylan looked maybe 26, with the lean build of someone who spent most of his time hiking canyon trails. His uniform was neat, his gear well maintained. He shook my hand with a shy smile. Welcome aboard. I heard a lot about you from Marcus. He talked about his sister working up at Yellowstone. The mention of my brother hit harder than expected. Thanks. He mentioned he'd made friends here. He was good people. Dylan's expression turned serious. Captain, if you're assigning Spider Rock Patrol, I think Sarah should see the photos first. Captain Begay nodded. Show her. Dylan pulled out his phone, swiped through several images, then handed it to me. These are from 3 days ago. I was doing a routine patrol near Junction Ruins when I saw fresh tracks crossing the wash. The first photo showed boot prints in red sand. Men's hiking boots, probably size 10, clear tread pattern. I'd seen thousands of boot prints over my career. Nothing unusual. Dylan swiped to the next photo. This is 10 feet further along the same track line. The boot prints were still there, but between one print and the next, they changed. The tread pattern distorted, then disappeared. The shape of the foot elongated, and by the third print in the sequence, they weren't human anymore. 5 distinct toe marks, each ending in what looked like a claw. The stride length increased from normal human gait to something that would require 6-foot steps. That's not possible, I heard myself say. That's what I said. Dylan took the phone back. I followed protocols, photographed from distance, marked the location, called it in. Captain and I went back the next day with full documentation equipment. The tracks continued for another 50 yards, then disappeared entirely at a rock face. No one climbed up. They just stopped. Captain Begay was watching me carefully. Your grandmother understood these things. She tried to teach you, didn't she? I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say this was all elaborate hazing, or stress-induced pareidolia, or anything rational. But I remembered sitting in my grandmother's kitchen, 8 years old, listening to her tell stories about the Anai, the monsters from the old times, about things that walked like men but weren't, about the sealed caves that held powers older than the tribes that lived here. I dismissed them as legends, fairy tales, the kind of traditional stories every culture had. But Marcus was dead, and these photos showed something I couldn't explain. What do you need me to do? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Your assignment today is Spider Rock Area Patrol with Dylan. It's routine, checking in on visitors, making sure no one's trying to climb where they shouldn't be, general presence. But Sarah? Captain Begay's expression was grave. Stay away from the White House ruins upper section. The seal there is still damaged, and whatever opened it, we don't think it's gone. Dylan gathered gear while I stowed my pack in my assigned locker. My hands were shaking slightly as I checked my radio, my first aid kit, my water supply. This morning I'd driven here thinking I was starting a normal ranger job, a job that would let me investigate my brother's death through official channels, through evidence and reports and logical investigation. Now I was standing in a ranger station looking at photographs of tracks that violated every law of biology I understood, reading protocols that treated the supernatural as standard operating procedure, and being told to avoid the exact location where my brother had died. Dylan appeared at my shoulder. I know this is a lot. Trust me, I grew up hearing the stories, and I still almost quit my first week when I saw things I couldn't explain. But Captain Begay's right. Your grandmother knew what she was talking about, and if she said you'd come home, she probably knew you'd need to be here. Did you know my grandmother? Everyone knew her. She helped my aunt during a difficult time. Traditional healing, the kind you don't talk about casually. He grabbed his keys. Come on, Spider Rock is beautiful this time of year, and maybe we'll have a quiet day and you can just ease into things. But as we walked out to the patrol truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about this job was going to be easy. The canyon stretched out before us, beautiful and ancient, and hiding things in its sealed caves that had terrified medicine people enough to lock them away for 80 years. And something had opened one of those seals. Something that had killed my brother. I climbed into the passenger seat and buckled in as Dylan started the engine. The radio crackled with morning check-ins from other rangers. The sun climbed higher, burning away the dawn chill. And somewhere out in those 30 miles of twisted canyon, in the shadows of 1,000-year-old ruins, something was waiting. The radio call came through 45 minutes into our patrol. Dylan and I had been driving the South Rim Drive, a dirt road that wound along the canyon's southern edge, when dispatch crackled to life. Unit 4, we have a welfare check request. Julia Yazzie, 82 years old, residence near White House ruins overlook. Family hasn't heard from her in 4 days, requesting wellness visit. Dylan picked up the radio. Unit 4 responding, ETA 20 minutes. He glanced at me as he turned the truck around. Julia's a weaver, traditional. She lives alone out there by choice, says she needs the quiet to hear the patterns. Family usually visits twice a week, but they've been worried since... He trailed off. Since what? Since your brother died. Julia's Hogan is maybe half a mile from where they found Marcus. My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice professional. How well did she know him? Pretty well, I think. He interviewed her several times for his cultural resource documentation. She knew stories about the sealed caves that aren't written down anywhere. Dylan navigated a sharp turn, sending up clouds of red dust. She told me once that some stories aren't meant to be preserved, that some knowledge dies with the people who carry it for a reason. The drive took us deeper into the back country. The paved highway gave way to graded dirt road, then to a 2-track trail that wound between juniper trees and sagebrush. On our left, the canyon opened up in stages. First just the rim, then the upper walls becoming visible, then the full 800 feet of layered sandstone dropping away to the canyon floor. Below, the White House ruins were visible in the distance, the ancient Pueblo structures clinging to a massive alcove halfway up the north wall. We'd been driving for 18 minutes when I saw the Hogan. It sat on a flat area 50 yards from the canyon rim, a traditional octagonal structure built from logs and red mud. Smoke should have been rising from the smoke hole in the center of the roof. There was nothing. Dylan slowed the truck. That's not right. What? The door. He pointed. It's facing north. I stared at the structure. I'd grown up seeing Hogans. My grandmother had kept one for ceremonies. The door always faced east, toward the rising sun. Always. A north-facing door was a violation of tradition so fundamental that it marked a place as corrupted, wrong, a place where balance had been broken. Could she have built it that way intentionally? Even as I asked, I knew the answer. Julia? No way. She was traditional in every sense. Dylan put the truck in park but didn't kill the engine. Captain's going to want to know about this. He radioed in while I grabbed my gear. The air outside the truck was still, too still. No wind, no bird sounds, nothing. Just silence and the smell of sage and something else underneath it. Something organic and wrong. We approached the Hogan together. Dylan had his hand on his pepper spray. I had mine on my radio. The door was closed. A blanket hung across the opening from the inside. Julia Yazzie, Dylan called out. This is Navajo Tribal Rangers. We're here for a wellness check. No response. He called again, louder. Still nothing. We're coming in, I announced, then pulled back the blanket. The smell hit first. Death, 3 or 4 days old in the desert heat. I'd smelled it before during recovery operations at Yellowstone. Your body never forgets that particular combination of decomposition and stillness. Julia Yazzie sat against the far wall of the Hogan. She was dressed in traditional clothing, her gray hair still neatly tied back. Her eyes were open, staring at something in the center of the room. Her face was frozen in an expression I couldn't quite read. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. The entire floor of the Hogan was covered in sand paintings. Not the simple designs you might see in tourist demonstrations. These were intricate, precise, and absolutely forbidden. Sand paintings like these were only created during specific healing ceremonies, and they were always destroyed before sunset, the same day they were made. They held power, my grandmother had taught me. Leaving them exposed invited imbalance. These paintings had been here for days. Jesus, Dylan whispered. He pulled out his phone, started photographing. Sarah, these symbols, some of these shouldn't exist at all. He was right. I recognized some of them from my grandmother's teachings. Figures representing the Ye'ai, the holy people. Symbols for the 4 sacred mountains. But interspersed with them were other designs, inverted symbols, patterns that seemed to crawl at the edge of my vision when I looked at them directly. We need to call this in, I said. This isn't just a death scene. This is... Movement outside caught my eye through the door opening. 3 figures stood on the canyon rim, maybe 200 yards away. At first glance, they looked like tourists, people out for a hike, but something about the way they stood was wrong. Dylan, look. He followed my gaze. We watched in silence as the figures moved. One of them took a step forward, but the movement was jerky, wrong, like watching a video with frames missing. The figure's arms hung too long at its sides. When it turned its head to look in our direction, the head rotated too far, well past the range of human neck movement. Protocol 5, Dylan said quietly. We need to get back to the truck. Then the whistling started. It came from everywhere at once. Behind us, in front of us, from the canyon depths, from the juniper trees to our right. A complex pattern of whistles, too coordinated to be coincidence, definitely not wind. Protocol 6, active hunting behavior. Move, now! Dylan was already backing toward the truck, his hand on his weapon. I grabbed my camera, took 3 quick photos of the sand paintings and Julia's body, then followed. The whistling grew louder, more insistent. The 3 figures on the rim were walking now, heading in our direction with that same jerky, wrong movement. One of them opened its mouth, and even from 200 yards away, I could see that its jaw unhinged too far. We made it to the truck. Dylan started the engine while I radioed dispatch. Unit 4 to base. We have a 1054 deceased individual at the Yazzie residence. Scene shows signs of ceremonial activity. We are also observing 3 individuals displaying behavior consistent with Protocol 5. We are relocating and will secure the scene from a distance. Captain Begay's voice came back immediately. Unit 4, acknowledge Protocol 5 and 6. Relocate to safe distance and wait for backup. I'm 30 minutes out. FBI has been notified. Dylan drove us back down the trail to where it intersected with the main road, then pulled over. We sat in silence for a moment, both breathing hard. Through the windshield, I could see the rim where we'd seen the figures. They were gone. Did you get photos of them? Dylan asked. I checked my camera. Photos of Julia, photos of the sand paintings, photos of the Hogan interior. But when I scrolled to where I should have captured the figures on the rim, there was nothing. Just empty landscape and canyon walls. They were there, I said. We both saw them. I know. Dylan's hands were shaking slightly on the steering wheel. But this is how it works here. Things don't always show up on camera. Things don't always follow the rules you learned in academy. We waited for backup. Captain Begay arrived with 2 other rangers and an FBI agent named Martinez who looked skeptical until he saw the scene. They documented everything, though I noticed the captain taking specific photos that I suspected wouldn't make it into any official report. A medicine woman was called to cleanse the site. Julia's body was removed by the medical examiner. Cause of death listed as natural, cardiac arrest. But I'd seen her face. That wasn't someone who died of a heart attack. The sun was setting by the time we finished processing the scene. I drove back to Chelly in my own truck, exhausted and unsettled. I'd been assigned temporary housing, a small trailer on the edge of town while I looked for something permanent. It was furnished, functional, and felt like a cage. I made dinner I didn't eat. I tried to read reports I couldn't focus on. By 10 p.m., I gave up and went to bed, leaving one lamp on in the living room. Old habits from childhood, from nights when my grandmother's stories felt too real and darkness held too many possibilities. I woke at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of someone calling my name. Sarah. The voice came from outside the trailer, near the door. My brother's voice. Marcus, sounding exactly like he had 2 months ago when he'd called to tell me about the sealed cave he was investigating. Sarah, please, I'm so cold. Let me in. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering. Protocol 4. Do not answer voices calling from the canyon after dark, even if you recognize the voice as a family member or colleague. But this wasn't the canyon. This was town, with streetlights and neighbors and... Sarah, why won't you help me? I don't understand what happened to me. I was climbing and then I was falling and you weren't there. You left me. You left all of us. My hands found my service weapon on the nightstand. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't go to the window. I sat in the darkness of my bedroom and forced myself to breathe. Baby girl, it's Daddy. I know you're scared, but it's okay. Open the door. Your mother and I have been looking for you. My father's voice. I was 8 years old again, desperate for my parents to be alive. The rational part of my brain knew this was impossible. My parents had been dead for 24 years. But the child in me, the one who still missed them, wanted so badly to believe. Sarah Marie Nez, you open this door right now. My grandmother's voice, stern like when I'd tracked mud through her clean kitchen. I didn't raise you to be rude to family. I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood. Tears ran down my face in the darkness. The voices cycled through all of them. Marcus begging to understand why he was dead. My mother promising to braid my hair the way I liked. My father saying he was so proud of his little ranger. My grandmother telling me she'd made fry bread, my favorite. Please come eat. The voices tried every approach. Pleading, demanding, guilt, love, anger. They knew exactly what to say because they were using my own memories, my own grief, as weapons against me. I don't know how long I sat there. Time stretched and compressed. I watched my bedside clock crawl from 2:47 to 3:15 to 4:02. The voices never stopped, never tired. At some point, I started reciting every traditional protection prayer I could remember from childhood, the ones I'd tried so hard to forget. Dawn came slowly. The sky through my bedroom window shifted from black to deep blue to pale gold, and with the first true light of sunrise, the voices stopped. I waited 10 minutes more, then crept to the window. The street outside was empty. No figures, no shadows, nothing. I checked every window in the trailer. Nothing. When I finally worked up the courage to open the front door, there were no footprints in the dirt around my trailer, no disturbance in the dust, no sign that anyone had been there at all. But I knew what I'd heard. and I knew with absolute certainty that something in Canyon de Chelly had recognized me. Something that knew my family, knew my grief, knew exactly how to hurt me. Whatever had killed Marcus, whatever had been released when those sealed caves were damaged, it knew I was here now. And it was coming for me next. I showed up at the ranger station looking like hell. Captain Begay took one look at me and handed me coffee without comment. "Protocol 4, he said quietly. "You didn't answer." It wasn't a question. "No, I followed the protocols." "Good." He gestured toward his office. "We need to talk. Bring the coffee." Dylan was already there, along with FBI agent Martinez and a woman I didn't recognize, tribal police detective named Shirley Todachine. The desk was covered with files, photographs, maps. Captain Begay closed the door behind me. "What you experienced last night," he began, "confirms what we've suspected. Whatever's active in the canyon, it's targeted you specifically, which means we need to bring you fully up to speed." He spread out 6 missing person files across the desk. Over the last 18 months, 6 people have disappeared from areas adjacent to Canyon de Chelly. All of them were last seen near sealed cave entrances. All of them vanished during new moon phases. I picked up the first file. Jenny Begay, 28, last seen hiking near Mummy Cave. Disappeared March 15th of last year. The moon phase calendar showed new moon. The second file, Thomas Chi, 32, disappeared near Standing Cow Ruin, May 12th. New moon. The pattern held across all 6 cases. "Marcus makes 7, I said. "Yes." Captain Begay pulled out my brother's file. I'd already read the official report, but seeing it laid out with the others made something click into place. "Your brother was investigating seal damage at White House Ruins upper section. He disappeared July 22nd. New moon. His body was found the next morning at the base of the cliff, 30 feet from a sealed cave entrance that showed fresh damage." Detective Todachine leaned forward. "We've interviewed family members of all 6 missing persons. 4 of them had some connection to cultural resource work. 2 were weavers who used traditional dyes. 1 was studying to be a medicine person. Your brother was documenting archaeological sites. They were all connected to traditional knowledge," I said slowly. "More than that." Martinez pulled out a map of the canyon system. 23 red dots were marked throughout the 30-mile network of gorges. These are the locations of sealed caves. The sealing operation happened in 1943, coordinated by medicine people from 7 different chapters. Historical records are sparse, but what we do know is that something happened during World War II. Something that made tribal elders decide certain cave systems needed to be permanently closed. Captain Begay pointed to 5 of the dots, each circled in blue. These 5 seals have been damaged in the last 18 months. 4 of them match the locations where people disappeared. The 5th is White House Ruins, where we found Marcus. "Someone's opening them deliberately," I said. "Yes. And we think we know who." Dylan pulled up photos on his laptop. These 3 individuals have been spotted repeatedly near the damaged sites. Robert Cly, 34, has a PhD in archaeology, but was fired from University of New Mexico 3 years ago for attempting to excavate a sealed cave without proper permits or consultation. His cousin James Cly, 29, has 2 arrests for trespassing on tribal lands. And Teresa Nez, 31, no relation to you, was dismissed from a medicine apprenticeship for practicing dark ceremonies. I stared at the photos. 3 people who looked normal, unremarkable. But something about their eyes bothered me. A certain intensity, a look I couldn't quite define. "We've had surveillance on them for 2 months," Martinez said. "But they're careful. They know we're watching. And we don't have enough evidence for arrests. Breaking a cave seal isn't technically illegal under federal law, and tribal law would require proving intent to disturb sacred sites, which is complicated when they claim to be doing archaeological research. They killed my brother. My voice came out flat, hard. We believe so, Captain Begay said, but we can't prove it, yet, which is why we need your help, Sarah. There's something about your family, your bloodline, that's important to this case, and there's someone who can explain it better than I can. An hour later, I was in Captain Begay's truck driving north toward many farms. The landscape shifted from Red Rock Canyon country to rolling high desert, dotted with hogans and sheep. Dylan followed behind us in a patrol vehicle. The woman we're going to see is named Eleanor Benally, Captain Begay explained as he drove. She's 87 years old, a traditional diagnostician. She knew your grandmother well. In fact, your Shimasani came to see her about 2 years ago, not long before she got sick. What did they talk about? You. We turned off the highway onto a dirt road that wound between sage and juniper. A traditional hogan sat in a clearing, smoke rising from the center hole. An elderly woman stood outside, waiting. She wore a traditional dress, her white hair tied back, her face deeply lined but her eyes sharp and clear. Eleanor Benally greeted us in Navajo, then switched to English. Sarah Nez, you look like your Shimasani when she was young. Come inside. We have much to discuss and not enough time. The interior of the hogan was traditional. Sheepskins on the floor, a fire burning in the center pit, walls hung with herbs and woven textiles. Eleanor gestured for me to sit across from her. Captain Begay and Dylan waited outside. Your grandmother came to me before she died, Eleanor began without preamble. She said you would return to the canyon. She said you would need to know certain things she tried to teach you when you were young, but you weren't ready to hear. She told me stories about the Anaye, about sealed caves, about your great-great-grandmother, Mary Nez. Eleanor's eyes held mine. Your Shimasani's grandmother. She was one of the women who helped seal the caves in 1943. Do you know what year that was? What was happening in the world? World War II. Yes. The war came to the reservation in many ways. Our men enlisted, became code talkers, fought overseas. But the war came here in other ways too. There were experiments, things the government was testing in the desert. And there were incidents, things that came through, drawn by the violence, by the imbalance in the world. She stood, moved to a wooden chest in the corner, and pulled out a brittle photograph. It showed a group of women and men in traditional dress standing in front of a cave entrance. One of the women looked hauntingly familiar. That's your great-great-grandmother. She was 32 when this was taken. The caves were sealed over a 6-month period. 7 medicine men and 7 women from families with old bloodlines. They sealed 23 caves throughout the canyon, places where things had emerged that shouldn't exist in this world. What kind of things? The Anaye are what we call them now. Monsters from the old stories. But what came through during the war? Those weren't ancient. Those were something else. Something that fed on fear and death and violence drawn by the war's energy. The medicine people sealed them in the caves with prayers and songs and protections that were supposed to last forever. She handed me the photograph. Your bloodline is tied to those seals, Sarah. Your great-great-grandmother's prayers are woven into them, which means you have both a connection to what's inside and a responsibility to keep them closed. My hands trembled slightly holding the photo. The people opening the seals. They know about my family. Yes. And your brother's death wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. They needed bloodline sacrifice to weaken the seals further. Eleanor's, expression was grave. You are marked now by heritage, by your brother's death, by your return to this place. The things that were sealed, they know you're here. That's why they called to you last night, using voices of the dead. Can you protect me? I can teach you to protect yourself. But first, we must perform a ceremony. You've been exposed to corruption. You saw the sand paintings at Julia Yazzie home. You heard the voices. We need to cleanse you and strengthen your natural defenses. The ceremony took 2 hours. Eleanor burned cedar and sage, sang prayers in Navajo that made my bones vibrate with recognition, even though I couldn't translate all the words. She painted symbols on my forearms with white clay, then gave me a medicine bundle, a small leather pouch on a cord. Inside is turquoise from your grandmother's jewelry, cedar from a tree that grows near the sealed caves, and other protections. Wear this always. Do not remove it, even to sleep. She placed it around my neck. Now we begin your training. She taught me to recognize corrupted prayers. The words sound almost right, but wrong, like hearing a song slightly out of tune. Your body will react, metallic taste, nausea, the feeling that you need to run. Trust those instincts. She made me practice defensive songs, simple chants that created spiritual barriers. These won't destroy what's out there, but they'll give you time. Time to escape, time to find help, time to survive. By the time we finished, the sun was setting. Eleanor walked me to the truck where Captain Begay waited. Your grandmother was proud of you, she said. Even when you left, even when you rejected the teachings. She knew you would need those lessons someday, and she knew you'd remember when the time came. The drive back to Chelly was quiet. Captain Begay finally broke the silence. Eleanor doesn't do that for just anyone. You should feel honored. I feel terrified. Good. That means you're taking this seriously. He glanced at me. We've made progress on the investigation front, too. While you were with Eleanor, Dylan coordinated with FBI surveillance. Our 3 suspects were spotted at Thunderbird Lodge this afternoon. They're getting bolder, less careful. Martinez thinks they're planning something soon. Over the next week, I fell into a routine that felt increasingly surreal. Days were spent on normal ranger duties, checking on visitors, maintaining trails, responding to minor incidents. But nights were spent in briefings about supernatural threats, studying photographs of impossible tracks, learning songs that were supposed to protect me from things I still wasn't sure I believed in. Until the night Dylan and I were parked in surveillance near Mummy Cave, and I heard it. A voice in the darkness, speaking prayers backwards. The words made my mouth taste like copper. My stomach turned. Everything Eleanor taught me screamed that something was wrong. Dylan, do you hear that? He tilted his head, listening, faintly, like someone chanting, but wrong. We tracked the sound to a ridge overlooking the canyon. Through night vision, we saw them. Robert, James, and Teresa standing near a sealed cave entrance, performing some kind of ceremony. We photographed everything, documented the violation, called for backup. But by the time reinforcements arrived, they were gone, vanished into the canyon like smoke. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Martinez got a warrant based on accumulated evidence, the surveillance, the pattern of appearances near sealed sites, Robert's academic history. We raided an abandoned trading post 8 miles south of the canyon, a place that had been closed for 15 years. What we found inside made my blood run cold. The main room had been converted into a workshop. Stolen artifacts from museums lined the walls, pottery, ceremonial objects, items that should have been in climate-controlled storage. But worse than that was the equipment: climbing gear, ropes, pitons, and in the corner, a pile of personal effects: wallets, driver's licenses, jewelry. I recognized Marcus's blue climbing rope immediately, the one he'd had since college, worn in specific places from years of use. His driver's license was there too, along with his ranger badge. "They kept trophies," Dylan said quietly. But the worst thing was the map on the wall, hand-drawn, incredibly detailed, showing all 23 sealed caves throughout Canyon de Chelly. 11 of them were marked with red circles. 5 of those had dates written next to them. I checked the dates against our missing persons files. Perfect match. 4 dates corresponded to 4 disappearances. The 5th date was July 22nd, the night Marcus died. "They're not just opening caves," Martinez said, photographing everything. "They're following a specific sequence. Look at the pattern." He was right. The circled caves formed a rough geometric shape when connected on the map, and there were 6 more still unmarked with dates. I moved to a desk in the corner, found a journal. Robert Cly's handwriting, detailed notes about each sealed cave, about the ceremonies required to open them, about the sacrifices needed. One entry made me stop breathing. The 5th opening requires specific bloodline sacrifice. The Nez woman's grandson was perfect, direct descendant of one of the original sealers. His death will weaken the strongest of the old protections. The cave at White House Ruins contains what we need to complete the pattern. Marcus hadn't died in an accident. He'd been murdered, deliberately chosen, deliberately killed. His death used to corrupt the very protections our family had helped create. I must have made a sound because Dylan was suddenly there, steadying me. "Sarah, deep breath. We've got them now. This is evidence. This is enough for arrests." But we didn't get them. Not then. Captain Begay put out alerts. FBI issued warrants. We had teams watching every sealed cave. And for 2 days, nothing. No sign of Robert, James, or Teresa. They'd gone to ground, until I stopped for coffee at a shop in Chinle on my day off. Robert Cly was sitting at a corner table drinking tea like he didn't have multiple warrants out for his arrest. He saw me, smiled, and gestured to the empty chair across from him. Every instinct screamed at me to call for backup, to maintain distance, to follow protocol. But rage won. I sat down, my hand on my radio. "Officer Nez," he said pleasantly. "Or do you prefer Sarah? Your brother Marcus, he preferred I call him by his first name. We had such interesting conversations before he died. You murdered him. I gave him a choice. He could have joined us, helped open the caves willingly. His bloodline would have been even more powerful offered freely." Robert's eyes were cold. But he refused. He said his sister was a ranger, that she'd figure it out, that someone would stop us. He really believed in you. My hand tightened on my radio, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What's in those caves?" "Power. The kind that was sealed away by people who were afraid of change, afraid of what could be accomplished if we embraced what the old ones kept locked away. The war brought them here, Sarah. Entities that exist between worlds, that feed on the right kinds of energy. The medicine people in 1943 sealed them away out of fear. But we're not afraid. We're going to finish what we started. You've opened 5 caves, killed 7 people. 6 caves," he corrected. "We finished the 6th last night during the new moon. Your brother's sacrifice gave us everything we needed to breach the White House seal, and now the pattern is nearly complete." He leaned forward. "Your brother Marcus," he understood eventually. Right at the end, when he was falling, He understood what we were trying to do. He sends his regards from the deep places. I hit the alert on my radio. Robert stood calmly, finished his tea. 5 more caves to go. 5 more new moons. And then everything sealed in 1943 will be free again. He walked toward the door, then paused. You should know, Sarah, the 7th opening requires another bloodline sacrifice. Your great-great-grandmother's line isn't finished yet. See you at the next new moon. He was gone before backup arrived, vanished into the afternoon crowds like a ghost. That night, back at the ranger station, we stared at the map. 6 caves opened, 5 to go, and the next new moon was in 11 days. They're going to come for you, Captain Begay said. Your bloodline. You're marked, and they need one more sacrifice to complete whatever pattern they're building. I touched the medicine bundle around my neck, felt my grandmother's turquoise warm against my skin. Marcus had died trying to stop this. 6 other people were missing or dead, and somewhere in the sealed caves, something was waiting to be freed. Then we use me as bait, I said. We know when they'll try. The new moon. We know they need me. So we set a trap, and we end this. Captain Begay looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. We have 11 days to prepare. Eleanor needs to strengthen your protections. And Sarah, we're going to need every resource we have. Because whatever they're trying to release, it's killed medicine people before. We're not fighting humans anymore. We're fighting something that's been locked away for 80 years, getting stronger behind sealed stone. And it's very, very hungry. The pain hit me as soon as I tried to move. My ribs screamed where the seatbelt had caught me during the rollover, and something warm trickled down the side of my face. Blood. I was hanging upside down in the overturned patrol truck, suspended by my seatbelt, surrounded by shattered glass and the sharp smell of gasoline. Outside, something circled the vehicle. I could hear it moving, testing the doors, breathing in a way that didn't sound human. Then Marcus's voice came again, perfect in every detail. Sarah, I know you're hurt. Let me help you. Just open the door. My hand found my knife. I cut the seatbelt and dropped hard onto what had been the roof, biting back a cry as my ribs protested. Through the broken windshield, I could see Highway 191 above me, empty in the pre-dawn darkness. The truck had rolled 20 feet down into a shallow ravine. My radio crackled to life. Captain Begay's voice, strained and urgent. Sarah, if you can hear me, respond. We're 15 minutes out from your location. Can you hold position? I grabbed the radio. I'm mobile, injured but functional. What's the situation? It's bad. Rebecca Tsosi went into the opened cave at Spider Rock trying to close it. She's down, unconscious, critical condition. We've got Dylan providing first aid, but... He paused. Eleanor called me 20 minutes ago. She said the cave can only be sealed by bloodline. The original sealer's descendants. Sarah, you're the only Nez family member we have right now. The thing outside the truck moved closer. I could see its shadow through the broken windows. Too tall. Proportions wrong. This is what Marcus died for, Captain Begay continued. This is what your grandmother prepared you for. You're the only one who can finish this. I looked at the medicine bundle around my neck, then at the figure circling outside. Eleanor's training came back. Acknowledge without accepting. Create barriers with song. Move with purpose, not fear. I'm coming, I said into the radio. What's my route? My truck is 300 yards north of your position on the highway. Keys are in it. Dylan's with Rebecca at Spider Rock. That's 15 miles. Can you make it? I kicked out the remaining windshield glass, cutting my hands in the process. I'm already moving. The climb up from the ravine felt like it took forever. Every movement sent fire through my ribs. The entity followed, maintaining distance, speaking in Marcus's voice, then my mother's, then my grandmother's. But I sang under my breath, the protective chants Eleanor taught me, and it didn't come closer. Captain Begay's truck sat where he said it would be, driver's door open, engine still running. I hauled myself in, slammed the door, and hit the gas before the thing in the darkness could reach me. In the rearview mirror, I saw 3 figures standing on the road, watching me drive away, their heads tilted at angles that made my stomach turn. The drive to Spider Rock was a blur of pain and adrenaline. The truck's check engine light was on, something grinding in the front axle from the earlier chase. But it held together. The sky to the east was starting to lighten, false dawn painting the horizon pale blue. I passed abandoned vehicles along the way, FBI units, ranger trucks, all empty with doors open and windows shattered, blood on some of the seats. Whatever had attacked us during the operation had hit hard and fast. I tried not to think about casualties, tried to focus on the road, on breathing through the pain in my ribs, on what I needed to do. 15 miles in 23 minutes. I saw the smoke first, rising from fires set during the chaos. Then Spider Rock itself, that massive 800-foot spire rising from the canyon floor, sacred and ancient. And at its base, a cluster of emergency vehicles, lights still flashing. I skidded to a stop near the cave entrance. Dylan was there, his left arm in a makeshift sling, blood on his uniform. He was kneeling next to Rebecca Sosi, who lay on a stretcher, her face pale, paramedics working on her. Sarah, thank God. Dylan stood as I got out. Captain said you were coming. Are you okay? I'll live. Rebecca? Stable but unconscious. Whatever was in that cave, it fought back when she tried to seal it. She took a bad fall, possible spinal injury. Medevac's 10 minutes out. He looked at me more carefully. Jesus, you look like hell. Where are they? Robert and the others? Gone. Fled deeper into the canyon after... He gestured at the chaos around us. After everything went wrong, FBI's got teams searching, but in this terrain, at night, they could be anywhere. I turned to look at the cave entrance. 6 feet wide, set into the cliff face 30 feet above the canyon floor. The ancient stone seal that had held for 80 years lay in pieces on the ground. Beyond the entrance was darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the beam from my flashlight. Dylan, I need to go in there. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, I do. That's why I came home. I touched the medicine bundle at my neck. Eleanor said bloodline can seal it. I'm bloodline, and if I don't do this now, more people die. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. There's a rope system already set up. Rebecca got 80 feet down before whatever's down there attacked her. The chamber's another 20 feet beyond that. I gathered gear. Climbing harness, carabiners, flashlight, knife. My service weapon went on my belt even, though I suspected it would be useless against what waited below. Dylan helped me into the harness, his movements gentle around my injured ribs. Radio check every 5 minutes, he said. If you don't respond, I'm coming down. If I don't respond, you seal the entrance with me inside. Sarah, promise me. He hesitated, then nodded. I promise. The entrance was narrow, forcing me to crawl for the first 10 feet. My ribs screamed with every movement, but I pushed through. The passage opened up into a vertical shaft with rope anchored to natural rock formations. I clipped in and started descending. The walls were covered in pictographs, Ancient ones showing the ancestral Puebloans who built the nearby ruins, but also newer ones from 1943. I recognized some of the symbols Eleanor had taught me: protective prayers, binding songs rendered in ochre and charcoal, and beneath them, scratched into the stone more recently, inverted versions of the same symbols. Robert's work, corrupting the protections my great-great-grandmother had helped create. The descent took 10 minutes. My arms shook from exhaustion and pain by the time I reached the chamber floor. I unclipped from the rope and pulled my flashlight. The chamber was roughly 30 feet across, carved by water over millennia. The ceiling arched 20 feet overhead, and in the corners I saw bones. Not human. Too long, joints in the wrong places, skulls that suggested something that had never walked on Earth naturally. Sarah Nez. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Not Marcus this time. Something else. Something old and patient and very, very aware. I forced myself to speak. I'm here. Third-generation descendant of Mary Nez, granddaughter of the woman who taught you songs you tried to forget. Sister to Marcus Nez, whose fear tasted of regret and longing. The darkness in front of me coalesced, forming something that hurt to look at directly. Too tall, too pale, limbs that bent in ways that violated geometry. You have come to seal me away again. Yes. Let me show you something first. The vision hit like a physical blow. I was Marcus, standing at the top of White House Ruins cliff. I could feel his thoughts, his memories. He'd figured out what Robert was planning. He'd called Captain Begay, asked for backup, but they'd gotten to him first. 3 figures emerging from the darkness, backing him toward the cliff edge. Robert's voice. Your bloodline. Your death will give us what we need. Marcus fighting back, trying to run, losing his footing. The moment of falling, his scream. My name, Sarah's name. Knowing this was his fault. Knowing his sister would have to clean up his failure. I gasped, pulling back to myself, tears streaming down my face. I can return him, the entity said. Its form shifted, and suddenly Marcus stood in front of me, looking exactly as he had 2 months ago. I can bring them all back. Your brother, your parents, your grandmother. I exist between life and death, Sarah Nez. I have that power. All you have to do is help me. Open the remaining seals. Free what was imprisoned here. And everyone you've lost can come home. It was everything I wanted. Everything I'd grieved for. Marcus alive again, apologizing for scaring me, promising to be more careful. My parents returned from 24 years of death, getting to see the woman I'd become. My grandmother, teaching me the lessons I'd been too angry to learn the first time. But Eleanor's voice echoed in my memory. They will offer you everything you desire. Acknowledge without accepting. The old ways require 3 offerings, freely given. I took a breath, tasting blood from my split lip. I acknowledge you are Anaye, born of imbalance between worlds, drawn here by violence and fear during a time of great war. Not ancient evil, but something newer, something that feeds on what humans created. The Marcus shape flickered, became something else again, the entity's true form, writhing and barely contained. Second offering, I continued, remembering Eleanor's words exactly. I honor what you were before corruption twisted you to this. You were power without malice once, neutral force. It was humans who taught you to hunger, who gave you taste for fear and death. The entity moved closer. You understand more than your brother did, more than the medicine people in 1943. They sealed me in fear. You approach without fear. I approach with purpose. I pulled my knife, cut across my palm. Blood welled up, mixing with the dirt and cuts already there. On the chamber floor, I found what I was looking for, a piece of the original seal stone about the size of my fist, covered in prayers carved 80 years ago. Third offering, my blood given freely, not taken in sacrifice, not spilled in violence. I choose this. No fear, no regret. I reclaim this seal in my bloodline's name. I pressed my bleeding palm to the stone. Power surged through me, recognition, connection to my great-great-grandmother, to every protection prayer she'd spoken. The entity recoiled. True bloodline, old ways honored, the dead is satisfied. Its voice held something like surprise. You are bound by law older than your tribes, older than this land. The willing sacrifice breaks what was corrupted. I began to sing, the binding song Eleanor had taught me, words in Navajo that I'd practiced every night for 11 days. My voice was rough, broken by pain and exhaustion, but the words came out clear and strong. Light exploded from the seal stone. The entity screamed, a sound that existed in frequencies human ears weren't meant to process. It was forced backward, away from me, toward the darkness at the rear of the chamber. I saw the opening there, a crack in reality itself, and the entity was pulled through it. The old laws bind me, it said as it vanished. But there are others who were sealed, others who will be freed. This is not finished, daughter of Mary Nez. Then it was gone. The light faded. I stood alone in the chamber, clutching the seal stone, my hand bleeding freely, my entire body shaking. Sarah, Dylan's voice from above. Sarah, respond. I'm coming up, I called back. I have the stone. The climb took everything I had left. 80 feet of rope, hand over hand, my injured ribs making every pull agony. My cut palm screamed as the rope bit into the wound. But I climbed because Marcus had died trying to stop this. And my grandmother had prepared me for this. And I wasn't going to fail them. I emerged from the cave entrance into pre-dawn light. Dylan was there, catching me as I collapsed. Rebecca had been evacuated. Captain Begay had arrived with more units. And standing near the cave entrance, wrapped in a traditional blanket, was Eleanor Benally. You did well, child, she said, kneeling beside me. Now we finish it. Together, Eleanor and I performed the sealing ceremony. My blood on the stone, mixed with prayers she spoke in Navajo, words that echoed the original ceremony from 1943. We placed the seal stone back into position, and other rangers helped us move the larger pieces back into place. As the sun broke over the canyon rim, first light turning the red walls to gold, Eleanor sang the final binding song. The seal stone glowed briefly, then went dark. From deep within the cave system, something screamed, rage and frustration and promise of future threat. Then silence, complete and absolute. The cave was sealed. I sat on the ground, Eleanor's hand on my shoulder, Dylan providing first aid to my injuries, and watched the sunrise paint Canyon de Chelly in shades of red and gold. Somewhere in that maze of canyons, Robert and his followers were still free. 5 more seals remained vulnerable. But for now, this cave was closed. The entity that had killed my brother was locked away again. It said there are others, I told Eleanor quietly. Other things that were sealed. Yes, she agreed. Your fight is not over, Sarah Nez. It is only beginning. But today, you honored your bloodline. You honored your grandmother's teachings. You sealed away what your great-great-grandmother imprisoned 80 years ago. That is enough for today. Captain Begay's radio crackled with updates. FBI had found evidence of Robert's group near Massacre Cave. Rebecca was stable at the hospital. Casualties from the night's chaos were being assessed. The bureaucracy of law enforcement moved forward. turning supernatural horror into paperwork and reports. But I sat in the growing light, my grandmother's turquoise warm against my chest, my brother's sacrifice honored, and knew with absolute certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. The canyon stretched out before me, beautiful and deadly and sacred, and I would protect it, whatever it took. 3 months later, I stood at the front of the ranger station briefing room, looking at faces that had become familiar. Rebecca Sosi sat in the front row, fully recovered from her spinal injury, back on active duty after 8 weeks of physical therapy. Dylan was next to her, his arm healed, though he still favored it when the weather changed. Captain Begay stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, a slight smile on his weathered face. "Morning briefing," I said, still getting used to the weight of the senior ranger badge on my uniform. First item. Protocol modifications based on the Spider Rock incident have been officially adopted. Protocol 8. Any ranger experiencing unexplained equipment failure near sealed cave sites must immediately retreat and request backup. Protocol 9. Bloodline descendants of the original 1943 sealing ceremony are required to carry enhanced protection bundles at all times while on duty. Rebecca raised her hand. Any update on the suspects? I pulled up the file on the screen. Photos of Robert Cly, James Cly, and Teresa Nez stared back at us. FBI located their vehicle 6 weeks ago in a remote section of Canyon del Muerto. The truck was empty. Evidence suggests they fled on foot deeper into the canyon system. Search teams found tracks leading to multiple sealed cave entrances. The tracks... I paused, remembering. The tracks showed transformation patterns consistent with what we documented earlier. Current status, presumed dead, though the case remains open. "Do we think they're actually dead?" Dylan asked. "Honestly? I don't know. Whatever they were trying to release, whatever they were becoming part of, I think they went somewhere we can't follow." I advanced to the next slide. What we do know is that no new seals have been damaged since the Spider Rock incident. The remaining 5 marked caves from Robert's map are under 24-hour surveillance, and we've strengthened protections at all 23 sealed sites with help from medicine people from 7 chapters. The briefing continued for another 30 minutes. Assignment rotations, equipment updates, coordination with FBI and National Park Service. The mundane mechanics of law enforcement, grounded in reality, but now acknowledging things that existed in the spaces between worlds. After the briefing, I grabbed my keys and headed out. It was my day off, but there was somewhere I needed to be. The Chelly Community Cemetery sat on a rise overlooking the town, protected by a simple fence and shaded by a few cottonwood trees that had somehow found enough water to survive in the high desert. My grandmother's grave was near the center, marked by a simple stone with her name and the dates that bookended her 84 years. Her plot was well tended, flowers regularly replaced by cousins and nieces and community members who still remembered her kindness. Marcus's grave was 10 yards away, the stone still new enough that the carved letters looked sharp and fresh. Someone had left flowers recently, marigolds and sage, wrapped in the traditional way, probably our aunt, who visited from Gallup every few weeks. I knelt in front of the headstone, touching the warm granite. The November sun was gentle, the air cool but not cold. A good day, the kind Marcus had always loved. "Hey, little brother," I said quietly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I'm sorry I wasn't here when you needed me." The wind moved through the cottonwood trees, making the leaves whisper. "I understand now. What you were trying to do. You figured out what Robert was planning, and you tried to stop them. You called for backup. You fought. You didn't just fall, Marcus. You were fighting right up until the end. My voice cracked. I saw what happened. In the cave, the entity showed me. You were trying to protect people. You died trying to do the right thing. I pulled the medicine bundle from around my neck, carefully opened it. Inside, among the cedar and protective herbs, was one piece of turquoise from our grandmother's jewelry. The largest piece, the one she'd worn every day for as long as I could remember. Eleanor had told me to keep it close for protection, but I knew where it belonged now. I placed it on Marcus's headstone, settling it into a small depression in the granite where it caught the sunlight. Shimasani's watching over both of us now, I said. She knew I'd come home eventually. She knew I'd figure out what I needed to do. And I think she knew you'd be the one to bring me back, even if it cost you everything. I wiped my eyes. I'm going to keep doing what you started. I'm going to protect this place, the canyon, the sealed caves, the old knowledge. I promise. I sat there for a while longer, just being present, letting the desert sun warm my shoulders. Finally, I stood, touched the headstone one more time, and walked back to my truck. Eleanor Benally's monthly visit was scheduled for that afternoon. She'd been coming to the ranger station once a month since the Spider Rock incident, teaching me things that went deeper than the basic protection prayers. Songs that could diagnose spiritual corruption, techniques for cleansing contaminated spaces, the old ways of reading signs in nature that warned of imbalance. She met me at a picnic area near the canyon rim, away from tourists and curious eyes. We sat at a weathered wooden table, sage smoke rising from a small clay bowl between us. "You're progressing quickly," Eleanor said in Navajo, then repeated in English. "Your grandmother would be proud. You've accepted what you are." I didn't have much choice. There's always choice. You could have left after Spider Rock, transferred back to Yellowstone, or taken a desk job, but you stayed. You chose this path. She poured us both coffee from a thermos. "The training I'm giving you now, it's what I gave your Shimasani when she was young. She never used most of it. She chose a different path, but she knew someone in her family would need it eventually. Did she know it would be me? She suspected. After Marcus died, she was certain." Eleanor's expression softened. "Your grandmother loved both of you fiercely, but she understood that sometimes the old knowledge demands sacrifice. Marcus's death opened the path for you, not because it was meant to happen, but because you chose to make meaning from it." We spent 2 hours training. Eleanor taught me a diagnostic song that revealed hidden corruption in sacred spaces. She showed me how to recognize the subtle signs that a seal was weakening before visible damage appeared. She explained the pattern of the 1943 sealing ceremony in greater detail, helping me understand the web of protection that had held for 80 years. 5 seals remain vulnerable, she reminded me. Robert and his followers marked them for a reason. Even if they're gone, even if they're dead, their work may continue. Others may find their research. The entities sealed in those caves are patient. They've waited 80 years. They can wait longer. I'll be ready. Yes, she agreed. You will be. My radio crackled just as we were finishing. Dylan's voice came through, professional but urgent. "Unit 7 to Senior Ranger Nez. We have a situation at Massacre Cave Overlook. Are you available to respond?" I picked up the radio. "This is Nez. What's the situation?" "Tourist guide just reported unusual activity. One of the sealed entrances in the Massacre Cave area is showing fresh disturbance, cracks in the seal that weren't there yesterday." And Dylan, his voice dropped slightly. "They're hearing whistling. At noon, when it should be silent." I met Eleanor's eyes. She nodded slowly. Go. This is your work now. Unit 7, I'm responding. ETA 15 minutes. Contact Captain Begay and request backup units. Nobody approaches that cave entrance until I arrive. Copy that. Be careful, Sarah. I packed Eleanor's training materials, helped her to her truck, then headed for my own vehicle. Dylan was already waiting at the station, gear ready, his expression tense but focused. Together? He asked as I pulled up. Always. We drove into the canyon, following the North Rim Drive as it wound between ancient walls of stone. The radio chattered with updates. Captain Begay was mobilizing units. FBI had been notified. Eleanor was contacting other medicine people. The machinery of response, working the way it was supposed to, balancing modern law enforcement with traditional knowledge. But as we drove, as the canyon walls rose 800 feet on either side of us, I thought about everything that had led here. Marcus's death, my return home, the protocols I'd learned to follow, the bloodline connection that tied me to protections made 80 years ago, my grandmother's preparation, teaching me songs and stories I'd rejected, knowing I would need them someday. The patrol vehicle descended deeper into Canyon de Chelly, into that sacred space where sunlight and shadow met, where ancient pueblos clung to cliff faces, where things that shouldn't exist were sealed behind stone and prayer. Tourists hiked the trails below us, unaware of what moved in the deep places. Families tended their fields in the canyon bottom, living lives that connected them to thousands of years of habitation. And I drove toward another sealed cave, another potential breach, another test of whether the old protections would hold against whatever pressed from the other side. My name is Sarah Nez. I'm a senior tribal ranger at Canyon de Chelly National Monument. I protect people from things they don't believe in. I enforce laws older than this country. I walk between the world you see and the world that my ancestors knew was always there. The world where caves must stay sealed, where prayers have power, where bloodline and sacrifice mean something real. My brother died walking this path. He died trying to stop what should never be released. My grandmother prepared me for this role, teaching me songs in a language I tried to forget, telling me stories I dismissed as superstition. She knew I would reject it all, leave the reservation, try to build a different life. And she loved me anyway, trusted that I would return when I was needed. The canyon walls rose around us, red sandstone glowing in the afternoon sun. Somewhere ahead, a sealed cave was showing damage. Whistling echoed from places where silence should reign. And whatever waited in those deep places, whatever had been locked away in 1943, was testing the barriers again. But I was ready. With Dylan beside me, with Captain Begay coordinating backup, with Eleanor's training fresh in my mind and my grandmother's turquoise still warm around my neck, I was ready. This is what I do. This is who I am. This is the work I was born to, even when I tried to run from it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The radio crackled again. Unit 7, this is dispatch. Multiple witnesses now reporting movement near the sealed entrance. Advise extreme caution. Dylan glanced at me. You ready for this? I touched the medicine bundle at my throat, felt the familiar weight of my grandmother's protection. The canyon stretched ahead, beautiful and deadly and sacred. Another cave, another threat, another chance to honor the promises made by my ancestors and defend the balance between worlds. Let's go to work, I said. The patrol vehicle rolled forward, carrying us deeper into the heart of Canyon de Chelly, toward whatever waited in the darkness behind cracked stone. The ancient walls watched us pass, silent witnesses to struggles that had played out for generations, and would continue for generations more, because some knowledge doesn't die. Some responsibilities pass from grandmother to granddaughter, from brother to sister, carried in bloodline and song, and the weight of understanding what most people will never believe. The canyon held its secrets close, but I was learning to read them, one sealed cave at a time.